The line between yards. Sometimes the line that divides two properties is more than just a strip of land. It becomes the line between patience and pride, between peace and war. For years, David lived a quiet life at the edge of a small suburban neighborhood. His home wasn't grand, but it was his. Every brick, every nail, every blade of grass on that small patch of land carried a piece of his effort. After years of saving, planning, and sacrifice, he had built a life that felt grounded, predictable, safe. But safety is fragile, and sometimes it only takes one neighbor to shatter it. When the house next door was sold, David had no reason to expect trouble. He watched as a moving truck arrived one windy morning, its doors swinging open to reveal piles of furniture and boxes. A middle-aged man stepped out, tall, loud, and confident. His name was Greg. And from the moment he arrived, the quiet rhythm of the neighborhood began to change. At first it was little things. Loud music echoing past midnight, trash cans left on the sidewalk for days, cars parked half on David's driveway. Annoying, yes, but not worth a fight. David told himself to let it go. Weeks passed, and the small disturbances grew into something harder to ignore. One morning, David noticed a fresh set of tire marks cutting across the corner of his driveway. The marks led directly to Greg's side, as if the man had decided that boundaries were optional. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a bright Saturday morning when David looked out his window and froze. Greg was standing at the edge of the driveway, holding a can of red spray paint. He was marking the ground, drawing a crooked line that crept several feet into David's side. By the time David stepped outside, half the concrete was covered in red paint. The neighbor's line wasn't just on his property. It sliced through it. From that day forward, things escalated. Greg began parking his truck closer and closer to David's garage as if to claim the space. Delivery drivers avoided the area because of the neighbor's constant yelling. Packages went missing. The once friendly wave between neighbors was replaced with icy stares. David felt cornered in his own home. He filed complaints. He took photos. He called the authorities, who shrugged and said it was a civil matter. Each night he returned home to find Greg's car partially blocking his drive, a quiet act of defiance. A message that said, "You can't stop me." But David wasn't the type to give up easily. He knew he had to stand his ground, not out of anger, but out of principle. Days turned into weeks of frustration and sleepless nights. He'd wake up before dawn, staring out the window at the faint glow of his driveway. That thin strip of concrete, once meaningless, now symbolized everything he stood for. His work, his dignity, his home. He spent hours researching property records, zoning laws, and local codes. And slowly he began to see a path forward, a way to reclaim what was his legally and permanently. It started with a visit to the county office where he confirmed the property line in black and white detail. The driveway down to the last inch belonged entirely to him. Armed with those documents, David planned his next move. He knew confronting Greg again would only fuel more hostility. So instead of shouting, he decided to build. Not out of spite, but out of resolve. If Greg couldn't respect a line on paper, then David would make it impossible to ignore. He called contractors. He studied designs. And one quiet morning, as the sun rose over the neighborhood, a delivery truck arrived, carrying bricks, mortar, and steel. The sound of hammers echoed down the street as workers began laying the first foundation stones. Curious neighbors peeked out from their blinds. Some smiled, others whispered. But David said nothing. He simply watched as the wall began to rise, inch by inch, along the border of his property. By the second day, Greg stormed out shouting from his porch. But David didn't respond. He didn't need to. His answer was written in stone and concrete, climbing higher with every hour. The wall wasn't built to provoke. It was built to protect, to reclaim peace from chaos, to turn weakness into strength. By the end of the week, it stood tall, solid, clean, and unmistakable. The boundary that had once been invisible was now undeniable. For the first time in months, David slept peacefully. But peace, as he would soon learn, never lasts long when pride is involved. Because some people don't accept defeat, they double down. And Greg was not done fighting. When the sun rose the next morning, David stepped outside expecting silence. But what he saw stopped him cold. The fresh surface of his new wall was covered in dark spray paint, words of anger, hatred, and defiance. A silent declaration that the war between neighbors had only just begun. As he stood there staring at the vandalized bricks, something changed inside him. This was no longer about concrete or property lines. It was about respect and the strength to defend it. The wall he built wasn't just made of stone anymore. It was built from resolve. He wiped the paint from his hands, took a deep breath, and walked back toward the house. Because now he knew this fight wasn't over.